Next, we have Professor Rifat Atun from the Harvard School of Public Health.
Good evening. Well, that was a hard act to follow. I was lecturing at Collège de France a few weeks ago, and a colleague, Philippe Aghion, who used to be at the Harvard Kennedy School, spoke before me, and he kept on moving around. And when my time came, I said, gosh, I don't have the agility or the speaking skills of my earlier colleague. But I'll try and share with you a journey out of the enclave. When Öykü wrote to me, she said, well, this is the last lecture. It's all about the key lessons, personal values, you would teach your students if you knew this was your last lecture at Harvard. And I thought, oh dear, do they know something that I don't know? That was really ominous. She assured me that that was not the case. But that enabled me to reflect on the past and reflect on my childhood. And I recalled, as a child, nothing was more thrilling than actually running on the great walls of the citadel, an enclave I grew up in the city of Famagusta in Cyprus. This citadel was built by the Lusignans, the French dynasty, that ruled Cyprus for about 300 years in the 12th and 15th century. And about 10,000 of us lived in this enclave for many years. Cyprus was a strategically important island, it still is. It was then on the Silk Road, but also on the route to the Holy Land. The legend has it that this city had 365 churches, one for each day of the year. And I thought maybe one day, once every 4 years, for non-pious activities. The walls of the citadel were fortified by Venetians, and these were thick walls, 30 feet deep on average, and some much longer. And the whole citadel was actually full of bastions, towers, and the castle of Othello, which the legend has it gave the name to to Shakespeare's play Othello, which was written in 1603. And the citadel, reflecting back, the citadel held 3 entrances, and one with a drawbridge that went over a moat. It was really quite surreal. So my formative years were spent in the citadel until the age of 12. And this enclave felt very restrictive and so enclosed, yet it also felt free. And that freedom emanated from the possibility of being able to run on these great walls and explore in these bastions secret tunnels with the hope of finding a Venetian treasure, which I never did, unfortunately. But the most thrilling aspect of running on the walls was actually the amazing view of the Mediterranean in the distance. And the thrill of actually having a very deep moat, about 100 feet on one side, and many sharp falls on the other side. But the most thrilling aspect was the possibility of actually one day leaving this enclave, and the possibility of freedom, and starting a journey out of the enclave. And like me, many children share this hope, to start the journey out of the enclave. So the journey began. The Chinese philosopher Lao Tzu once said, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. So the first step was out of the enclave was in England, Old England, as opposed to New England, where I went to boarding school, which felt like another enclave, although with terrible food, I can assure you. It was awful. But there, I learned something very important, the importance of multiculturalism. It was an amazing experience, living together with so many children from so many different backgrounds. It was so unifying, and it was so exciting. And this experience of multicultural environment, I was able to experience yet again at medical school than at the business school. But it was at the medical school when I also, and working as a doctor, when I also realized that globally, and also in a rich country like England, there was so much abject poverty, so much inequality, and so much suffering. It was shocking visiting some patients at home. The poverty was what you would see in many of the poorest countries. That led me to believe the importance of striving to do well, but also the importance of protecting the vulnerable at all times. So the journey to global health followed to make change, to achieve change, with the possibility of working in more than 30 countries, and a stint at the Global Fund, where I had the chance of working at an institution that invested in 160 countries. So the journey in global health brought so many privileges, being able to see the fruits of the effort that saved many lives and rid much suffering. But the most important opportunity was the possibility to collaborate with so many committed people who put first humanity and worked tirelessly for a better world, a world where we celebrate diversity, and the world where we find the strength in unity. And what I learned in global health, and this is an important reflective lesson, is that to realize these fruits, one needs to have passion, perseverance, and promise, a promise of a better world. But these are not just nice words or empty slogans, but these are important principles that are critically important in the rapidly changing context of today. The world is experiencing fundamental changes with massive economic, political, and social shifts, with widening inequalities, restrictions of movement, growing intolerance, and loss of protection. This is social protection. The promise of a better world is at risk. Many freedoms we have taken for granted and have come to enjoy are also at risk. So are the values of solidarity, equity, and tolerance, values we uphold so strongly at Harvard. The risk is especially true for children and vulnerable people, and those who find themselves forced to emigrate, or those who find themselves in conflict situations who don't have an opportunity to move elsewhere. To mitigate this risk, we have a collective responsibility. We must all work together to reverse this tide of intolerance. And Harvard is a critically important unifying force that can bring together those with the passion, perseverance, and promise, those like yourselves who celebrate diversity and find the strength in unity. Not doing so risks creating swathes of enclaves, not the small one that I lived in, but countries with many children and vulnerable people who will never be able to start the journey out of the enclave to realize their dream, a dream of freedom and the right to live in a just world. The risk is great, but the opportunity that you collectively can bring is even greater. I cannot think of better people or a greater institution than Harvard that can bring about change, and the change should start now. Thank you.